Let's move to China for a bit.
Yeah.
So, in an interesting twist, because we put sanctions on everybody. It doesn't matter. It's like we're perfectly fine and willing to do sanction policy for any particular reason in order to enforce our will. China has slapped sanctions on us. So apparently there are 28, I guess, products that are coming out of various manufacturers in the United States or companies that China has slapped dual use sanctions on, or dual use products and sanctions on those dual use products. What's going on with this? I mean, this seems to be military contractors. It says China has banned sales of dual use products to 28 military suppliers over increased concerns of national security, and country commerce ministry announced on Thursday. And of course, dual use items are items that can be used for weapons or for domestic usage. Why is China doing this? And what is this about?
This is obviously a retaliation for the Biden sanctions. Biden, in its outgoing last few months, Biden has rolled out a series of sanctions against Chinese companies. China just slapped sanctions on 28 American firms, defense contractors. U.S. just previously slapped sanctions against 140 Chinese companies for supposedly dual-use items. Anything can be dual use. My computer can be dual use, and the thing is, China has been very careful and very sparring on using tit for tat sanction against United States. By the way, Jamar, we're on the 7th year of the U.S. waged economic war on China. This economic war on China started in 2018 during the first Trump presidency. Biden doubled down and widened the scope of the sanction. And as Biden is going out of the office, they're slapping more sanctions. For example, the double down on the chip sanction, and just last month they widened the scope on the chip sanction. Even as the Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, admitted in public, she's saying the effort to stop China's technological progress is probably futile. Yet they're still doing it. And so now China is sending a clear message, like, we are not going to sit here and take it anymore. We have been very restrained on responding, but it doesn't mean we don't have things in our quiver, and their target is very specific. American defense contractor. We're talking about Raytheon, Boeing Defense, Lockheed Martin, and as Lockheed Martin CEO has said, we can't really decouple from China because we still need to source the essential components from China. And China is saying, you know what? We can play that game. If you want to sanction us, we can sanction you guys back. This is why China also applies a sanction on the critical minerals, germanium, gallium, antimony. Those are also used in military applications. And the thing is, China right now, China can make everything, right? There are certain things that China would like to buy from the United States, like high-tech items like chips. But U.S. said, no, you can't have that. So right now for China already make everything else. China's not going to get hurt by this decoupling. China is decoupling from the United States now. They're trying to build a U.S.-proof supply chain. This is whenever U.S. media talk about China, it's 100% projection. They are talking about China threatened our supply chain. But China is not the one that's initiated sanction against U.S. It's the U.S. that's proactively, preemptively placing whole slew of sanction against China. And this might also be pre-positioning for the incoming Trump administration, because we know Trump is a businessman. He likes to make deal, right? So if U.S. has been sanctioning China and China hasn't responded in kind, then how are we going to negotiate the tables? So China is now saying, look, we can also level sanctions. If we're going to have a deal, then you take your sanction off the table, then we can take off our sanctions off the table. So I think this is a combination of signaling to send a message, but also to preposition for a possible deal under Trump, if Trump is open to that.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think Trump is open to something like that? I mean, they always say it took Nixon to go to China. Have you seen anything that may give any indication that Donald Trump is open to some kind of trade deal with China in any way? I mean, it's very weird. For as open as he is with Russia, he has been a maniac on China.
Exactly. But the thing is, Trump is unpredictable, right? If anything, Trump is a wild card. I mean, he did want to meet with Kim Jong-un, before his own cabinet sabotaged that process, John Bolton. And then so at least we're going to have to see. I mean, China is already preparing for the worst, and they're hoping for the best. And by preparing for the worst, they are actively building their own supply chain to be not vulnerable to U.S. sanctions. One of the weak spot of the Chinese supply chain was a semiconductor. Was the chips. China used to spend $450 billion every year to import chips, but they spend more importing chips and importing oil. But U.S. decided to attack this one particular point because they thought, we got you. This is the weakest link in your supply chain. We got you now. We have you by your balls. But China has figured out a workaround. They are now dominating all the intermediate level chips. So when we're talking about chips, a lot of times they're talking about advanced chips. For example, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor, that makes the cutting edge chips. But what happened is the rounds and rounds of U.S. sanctions have forced China to plow so much in its domestic chip production. Now they're already dominate the mid-level chip production. And the mid-level chip production happened to be the largest market because chips go into everything: refrigerators, TVs, cars. Those chips, China can make themselves already. It's only those those 3-nanometer chips that go into your iPhone that China is not there yet. But for everything else, Huawei already figured out a way to improve the performance of their 7-nanometer chip to give the same result as the 3-nanometer chip of iPhone. So for the end users, it makes no difference. And again, it's same thing happened to AI. The whole point of U.S. chip sanction was to slow China's progress in AI because it's pushed by Google CEO Eric Schmidt. The idea is we're gonna be the one that makes the Terminator and Skynet before China, so China will be screwed. And the way we do that is we yank out their chip supply chain so they can't have enough chips to power their training of their AI. But we saw that's not happening because China just rolled out a DeepSeek, which not only is better, but DeepSeek they also made it cheaper for open AI. You are paying arm and a leg, but for the DeepSeek, you can run China's DeepSeek for 24 hours on $1.25. For $1.25,
Really?
you can. Yes, so this is revolutionary. What China does, which U.S. media calls overproduction, is China makes everything cheaper because they can scale up the production, and they did that. They did that with electronics, with TV, with phones, and now they're gonna do it with AI models. They're gonna this is gonna revolutionize everything. And the thing is, the whole Eric Schmidt he's focused on is AGI, the artificial general intelligence. The idea AGI is having an AI that have the same capability as a human being, and even surpass it. And they thought they're just around the corner. They're very close at creating Terminator, Skynet. So this is what we if we just cripple China for a couple of years, we're gonna leap ahead, and then China will be screwed. But what happened is, so far, what have AI gave us? It gave us Chat GPT, and Chat GPT is great. but
Yeah, but that's just a large language model. Yeah, that's not even. Yeah, that's not general intelligence.
It's nowhere
I'm sorry.
close. It's nowhere close.
Yeah,
It's nowhere close
Well,
to AGI, and China is catching up. Right after Eric Schmidt admitted publicly that China is only a few months behind.
mhm.
China came out with DeepSeek in December, so I don't think they're even a month behind anymore. I think that China have reached parity with United States in AI. That's giving the U.S. chip sanction on China. So right now, all we have in U.S. what do we have? We just have copium. The only thing that U.S. producing abundance right now is copium. There was a Chinese drone show for the New Year. And
Oh, dude, I saw that. Let me see if I can get it for my audience. Please explain, because I've never seen
amazing.
anything like it. Yeah,
It's out of this world, right? But the amount of copium in the comments on X about this it's also amazing, because people are saying, oh, Chinese government is doing this to keep their public in line, and because it's trying to show off the world, it has military applications, like, could possibly they're just trying to enjoy their New Year?
or that. But see, you must understand, from the U.S. perspective, like, we don't get China, and we don't get it on so many levels. Like, because from our point of view, well, Chinese believe their government is competent to the tune of 90% because they're all robots, and it's like, okay, just stop. Those people, their government is just competent. It's a difference. We're just not accustomed to our government being competent. This is the drone thing, and it is mind blowing. And it looks like a portal in the sky with the dragon going into the portal. That is astonishing. Like, when I first saw this, I was like, those are drones? It's like, yes, those are drones. And for people to realize, like, you make a really good point. Up to this point, everything that we've seen for AI has been large language models. And those are just, a huge vocabulary. We put those things together and we find words that correlate with one another, but there's no understanding in it. It doesn't, like, if you say, go to this page, click on this item and do this, it's not going to know how to do that. It's not going to be able to do it. But they want to be able to say, basically have a little helper in the tech thing that just works for your interest, and you just tell it what you needed to do. It's nowhere near that point yet. One of the other things that's super interesting also has to do with, what was it? Large language models, artificial general intelligence. There's something else that'll come to me in a moment. But you're right. There's a parity that seems to exist. I know what I was saying. There's a philosophical difference here that the West don't quite get, or maybe they don't want to get, which is this difference between a communist country and a capitalist country. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, they just call themselves communists. No, they are a communist country. It's just what they realize is, if you need abundance, you got to have some level of infrastructure in order to kind of make that work. And so whereas China looks at it and says, well, we need to have abundance in order to cut the cost so we can get this out to other people, the US looks at it as, okay, well, they're making too much of that product. You're cutting the cost. There's a difference in those things. You want the cost to be cheap because the entire point of technology is to make life easier for your populations. From our point of view, the point of technology is to maximize profit. How can we make as much money as possible that I can hold in my hands? And so Elon Musk can be, $200-300 billion, might be the first trillionaire, and the US thinks that's fine. Whereas from China's point of view, and correct me if I'm wrong, the issue is abundance. If you can create a system that creates a lot of something, then you gut the price of it so more people can get their hands on it. The holy grail of that is if you can make it free. We don't look at it that way. That's all. That's why they always complain. Oh, China is making too much of this product. China is oversaturating the market. China is doing this. China is doing that. And you would think in a rational world, okay, well, they're oversaturating it, which means it's going to be cheaper for people to get their hands on, for people to be able to use. That's not the way we look at it, Carl. But tell me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong in that? Like,
you are
philosophical difference. Yeah.
Nail meets ahead, Jamar, because I just saw another recently proposed sanctions on China in the U.S. Congress. They're blaming China for the fentanyl crisis in the United States, and the thing is, fentanyl. They're saying the reason they're giving for sanctioning China is they're saying the Chinese state is subsidizing the production of the chemical precursors. So China did not make fentanyl. Let's make that clear. China make chemical precursors that's the essential ingredient for making pharmaceuticals. China dominate the production of pharmaceutical ingredients. It supplies the world. What happened is criminal syndicate in the United States and Mexico, they import those chemical precursors through third party, and then in North America, they synthesize them into fentanyl, right? So there's nothing wrong with those chemical precursors. They're legal. It's what people do with it to make, fentanyl. That part is bad. But what China and United States used to have a law enforcement cooperation where China helped U.S. Custom to trace where those precursors get sent from factories in China, to make sure they don't end up in the wrong hands. Now, the cooperation was stopped for a couple of years because U.S. keep on slapping sanctions on China left and right. But when President Xi and Biden met in San Francisco, they agreed to restore the cooperation in tracing of the precursor shipment. And so, but the Congress rationale for sanctioning China is that China is making those chemical precursor too cheap because the Chinese state is subsidizing production. Now, this is exactly what you said. Chinese state is making those chemical precursors cheap, so the pharmaceutical ingredient will be cheap, so the drugs will be cheap. And this is something that people don't realize. In China, a lot of the generic drugs are being sold for penny on the dollar compared to how they're being marketed in the U.S. This is exactly because of the Chinese state intervention, because they want to make sure the common medicines are cheaply available to the populace, not as a profit-making tools to squeeze out every penny out of its a population of ill health, the way that United States is happening in the United States right now. This is the kind of the mentality. The people in the Congress, they don't understand it. For them, it's like, okay, Chinese state must be subsidizing the precursors, so those precursors can be cheaply made, so they can be shipped to Mexico and for the gangs to make fentanyl. Like, it's
a plan to undercut America by shipping fentanyl, by making precursors. Like, look, you can use that precursor to make fentanyl, or you can use it to make Tylenol, right? I mean, and not Tylenol proper. I'm just saying it's there for you to use for other things. They just so happen to take it to use it for fentanyl. I think the point is that there's some people who had this belief that if you're a communist, you got to be poor. And that's not really the way that's supposed to work. The entire point is overproduction, so you can cut the cost of those items. I can get a T-shirt for 5 cents. I can get this drug for $1. I can get this so-and-so. Whereas in the United States, you're paying, $20 for a T-shirt, or you're paying $500 for a pill. We look at it as a profit-making exercise. China looks at it differently. And fact of the matter is, a rational human being does not want to pay, $1,000 for a pill if you can get it for $5. But again,
that's why when the Western media accused China of exporting deflation, Xi Jinping reportedly said, "Don't people want cheaper goods? Don't people want the price to be lower?"
Yes, and that's a rational act. I mean, it's a fascinating dichotomy. It really is a systemic thing in regards to a difference in point of view of how technology is supposed to work, how people are supposed to deal and relate to that technology, and for that matter, what that technology is supposed to do. I mean, I agree with the premise that technology is supposed to make life easier, not necessarily supposed to make somebody a buck. We don't look at it that way. We don't look at it that way. It's a fascinating dynamic between the two. Carl, man, thank you for this. Great breakdown, especially of the South Korea thing. I am still gobsmacked over what they were trying to do and what they were trying to drag this world further into. I mean, I swear, man, Joe Biden is just trying to set fires around the globe. He is the worst president we've ever had on this planet. And, you know, you look at one war after the next, and for them, these sociopaths don't care. For them, it's just, well, we need to get South Korea to be on our side, and we need to know they're on our side by embroiling them into a war where we can take control of their military. And it's like, okay, that's gross. That's so deranged. It's gross. And by the way, it's what they're doing in Ukraine. So I'm not necessarily shocked that they would do it in South Korea, but man, it is just so over the top traumatic what they were trying to pull off. It's just astonishing. Carl, man, thank you for this. Carl Zha. Carl Zha is host of Silk and Steel podcast, focused on China and the surrounding regions and the history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Zha. You can follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk In, and subscribe and support the podcast on patreon.com/Silk and Steel. Definitely check out his YouTube channel. He has some really good videos on that channel. He has really good explanation. He's an easy person to talk to and damn sure knows his stuff. Thank you, Carl, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamar. Anytime.
You have a good one, man. Be safe.